What if everything you've been taught about productivity is not just wrong, but actively sabotaging your ability to create meaningful results in your life? For the past 15 years, I've studied the working patterns of individuals who achieve extraordinary results, not just successful people, but those who seem to operate in an entirely different realm of effectiveness. What I've discovered challenges every mainstream productivity philosophy you've ever encountered. The underground secrets of extreme productivity have nothing to do with time management, task optimization, or working harder. They have everything to do with understanding the deeper psychological and philosophical principles that govern human energy, motivation, and creative output. These principles are so fundamentally different from conventional productivity advice that they often appear to contradict everything we've been taught about getting things done. Consider the paradox of Alexandra, a theoretical physicist who publishes groundbreaking research while working what most people would consider part-time hours. She rarely works evenings, never checks email on weekends, and takes extended breaks throughout her day. Yet she produces more meaningful work in a month than most of her colleagues produce in a year. When asked about her productivity secrets, her answer is unsettling to anyone raised on hustle culture. I've learned that the secret to extreme productivity is knowing when not to be productive. This statement reveals the first underground secret of extreme productivity, the principle of strategic non-action. While most people measure productivity by how busy they appear or how many tasks they complete, individuals who achieve extraordinary results measure productivity by the quality and impact of what they create. They understand that true productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about doing the right things with complete presence and engagement. The philosophical foundation of this approach lies in what ancient Chinese philosophy calls Wu Wei, action through non-action. This doesn't mean being passive or lazy. It means learning to distinguish between activity and productivity, between motion and progress, between being busy and being effective. Most people confuse constant activity with productivity, but extreme producers understand that sustainable high performance requires a sophisticated understanding of when to act and when to refrain from acting. This brings us to a fundamental question that most productivity systems never address. What is productivity actually for? The conventional answer is efficiency, getting more done in less time. But individuals who achieve extreme productivity operate from a completely different paradigm. For them, productivity is not about efficiency. It's about effectiveness. It's not about speed. It's about depth. It's not about quantity. It's about significance. This philosophical shift changes everything. When your goal is efficiency, you optimize for speed and volume. You look for ways to cram more tasks into less time, to multitask more effectively, to eliminate breaks and maximize output. But when your goal is effectiveness, you optimize for impact and meaning. You look for ways to identify the few actions that will create the most significant results, and you give those actions the time, attention, and energy they deserve. The neuroscience supports this approach in fascinating ways. Dr. Teresa Amabel's research at Harvard Business School has shown that the most productive people don't have more energy or better time management skills than others. What they have is what she calls progress orientation, the ability to focus their energy on activities that create genuine forward movement toward meaningful goals rather than just completing tasks. This progress orientation is fundamentally different from task orientation. Task-oriented people feel productive when they check items off their to-do list. Progress-oriented people feel productive when they make meaningful advancement on their most important projects. Task-oriented people measure success by how many things they accomplish. Progress-oriented people measure success by how much closer they get to their desired outcomes. But here's where it gets really interesting. Progress orientation can't be achieved through willpower or discipline alone. It requires a deep understanding of what psychologists call intrinsic motivation, the internal drive that emerges when our actions are aligned with our deepest values and most authentic purposes. Most productivity systems ignore intrinsic motivation entirely. They assume that if you can just organize your tasks effectively enough, you'll naturally feel motivated to complete them. But extreme producers understand that motivation doesn't come from organization. It comes from meaning. When your work is aligned with your deepest sense of purpose, productivity stops being something you have to force and starts being something that emerges naturally from your engagement with meaningful activities. This is the second underground secret. Extreme productivity is never about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. It's about creating conditions where the things you need to do are also the things you're naturally drawn to do. It's about aligning your daily activities with your intrinsic motivation so that productivity feels less like work and more like play. Consider the case of Benjamin, a software architect who was struggling with chronic procrastination and burnout. He had tried every productivity system imaginable: getting things done, time blocking, the Pomodoro technique, productivity apps, but nothing created lasting change. His breakthrough came when he stopped trying to manage his tasks and started examining his relationship with his work. Benjamin discovered that his productivity problems weren't technical, they were philosophical. He had been trying to force himself to care about projects that didn't align with his deepest values. Once he learned to distinguish between work that energized him and work that drained him, he could make strategic choices about how to structure his career and daily activities to maximize alignment with his intrinsic motivation. This alignment didn't happen overnight. It required what I call values archaeology, a deep excavation of his authentic priorities beneath the layers of external expectations, social conditioning, and conventional definitions of success. But once Benjamin understood what he truly cared about, productivity became effortless. He wasn't forcing himself to work on important projects. He was choosing to spend his time on activities that felt important to him. This brings us to the third underground secret. Extreme productivity requires extreme selectivity. While most people try to be productive at everything, extreme producers are ruthlessly selective about what deserves their productive energy. They understand that saying yes to everything meaningful means saying no to everything truly extraordinary. The mathematics of this principle are unforgiving. If you try to be productive at 10 different priorities, you'll be mediocre at all of them. But if you focus your productive energy on one or two truly significant projects, you can achieve results that seem impossible to people who spread their attention across multiple areas. This selectivity extends beyond just choosing which projects to work on. It includes selecting which productivity methods to use, which environments to work in, which times of day to schedule different types of activities, and even which emotional states to cultivate for different kinds of work. Extreme producers understand that productivity is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. The methods that work for analytical thinking are different from the methods that work for creative expression. The environments that support focused concentration are different from the environments that support collaborative problem-solving. The emotional states that enhance detailed execution are different from the emotional states that facilitate visionary planning. This recognition leads to the fourth underground secret. Extreme productivity requires psychological flexibility. Instead of trying to find one perfect productivity system and stick to it forever, extreme producers develop what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to adapt their approaches based on the specific demands of their current situation. This flexibility extends to how they think about time itself. Most people relate to time as a scarce resource that must be managed and optimized. But extreme producers relate to time as a creative medium that can be shaped and sculpted to support their most important work. They understand that different types of activities require different temporal rhythms, and they organize their schedules accordingly. For example, Sarah, a documentary filmmaker, has discovered that her most creative work emerges when she gives herself large, unstructured blocks of time to explore ideas without predetermined outcomes. But her most productive editing work happens when she works in focused, time-limited sessions with clear objectives. Instead of trying to force all of her work into the same temporal structure, she designs her schedule to support the natural rhythms of different creative processes. This temporal flexibility is based on a deeper understanding of what neuroscientists call ultradian rhythms, the natural cycles of alertness, creativity, and focus that occur throughout the day. Most productivity systems ignore these natural rhythms and try to impose artificial structures on human energy patterns. But extreme producers learn to work with their ultradian rhythms rather than against them. They understand that there are times when their brains are naturally primed for analytical thinking, times when they're most open to creative insight, times when they're best suited for routine tasks, and times when they need to rest and recharge. Instead of fighting these natural cycles, they align their most important work with their peak performance windows. This biological awareness reveals the fifth underground secret. Extreme productivity is as much about recovery as it is about output. While most people try to maximize their productive hours, extreme producers try to optimize the quality of their work by ensuring they're always operating from their highest energy states. They understand that fatigue isn't just feeling tired, it's a degradation of cognitive capacity that makes everything they touch less effective. A tired mind doesn't just work slower, it works less creatively, less insightfully, and less strategically. By prioritizing recovery and working primarily from rested states, extreme producers ensure that every hour of work contributes maximum value. This creates what I call the productivity paradox. By working fewer hours, extreme producers often accomplish more meaningful results than people who work constantly. They're not superhuman. They're not more disciplined. They've just learned to optimize for effectiveness rather than activity. But perhaps the most profound underground secret is this: extreme productivity is ultimately not about productivity at all. It's about self-knowledge. It's about understanding your own energy patterns, motivation triggers, creative rhythms, and natural strengths so deeply that productive action becomes an expression of self-understanding rather than self-discipline. When you truly understand yourself, you stop trying to force yourself into productivity systems that don't match your natural way of being. Instead, you design approaches that work with your psychology rather than against it. This isn't about finding excuses for laziness. It's about finding authentic ways to channel your natural energy toward your most meaningful goals. This self-knowledge approach requires a fundamental reframe of what we mean by productivity challenges. Most people experience procrastination, distraction, and lack of motivation as character flaws that need to be overcome through willpower and discipline. But extreme producers understand that these experiences are usually signals that something in their approach is misaligned with their authentic nature. When you procrastinate on a project, your procrastination might be telling you that the project doesn't align with your values, that you're approaching it in a way that doesn't match your natural thinking style, or that you're trying to work on it at a time when your energy is better suited for different types of activities. Instead of fighting the procrastination, extreme producers listen to it and use it as information to optimize their approach. This listening requires what I call meta-productive awareness, the ability to observe your own productivity patterns with curiosity rather than judgment. Most people experience low productivity days as failures that prove they're not disciplined enough. But individuals who achieve extreme productivity experience low productivity days as data that helps them understand their natural rhythms and optimize their future performance. This shift from self-judgment to self-observation is perhaps the most transformative aspect of the underground productivity philosophy. When you stop judging your productivity patterns and start studying them, you begin to discover the conditions that naturally support your best work. You notice which environments make you feel energized versus drained, which types of activities generate momentum versus resistance, and which daily structures support sustained performance versus burnout. The practical implications of this approach are profound. Instead of trying to follow someone else's productivity system, you begin to develop your own personalized approach based on deep self-knowledge. This might mean working at unconventional hours, structuring your projects in unusual ways, or organizing your environment according to principles that seem strange to others but work perfectly for you. Consider the example of Thomas, a consultant who discovered that his most productive work happened in the early morning hours between 4 and 7 a.m. This discovery went against everything he had been taught about work-life balance and normal business hours. But when he restructured his schedule to protect those early morning hours for his most important projects, his productivity and job satisfaction increased dramatically. Thomas's approach seemed extreme to his colleagues, but it was based on careful observation of his own energy patterns rather than arbitrary rules about when productive work should happen. He had noticed that his mind was clearest in the early morning, before the demands and distractions of the day began to accumulate. By aligning his most important work with his peak cognitive hours, he could accomplish in 3 hours what previously took him all day. This brings us to another underground secret. Extreme productivity often requires lifestyle design choices that prioritize performance over convenience. Most people organize their lives around external constraints and social expectations, then try to fit their productive work into whatever time and energy remains. But extreme producers organize their lives around their most important work, then arrange everything else to support optimal performance. This doesn't mean becoming a workaholic or sacrificing relationships and health for productivity. It means becoming strategic about how you design your daily life to support your highest contributions. Sometimes this means saying no to social obligations that drain your energy. Sometimes it means structuring your living space to eliminate friction around important activities. Sometimes it means making career choices that prioritize meaningful work over conventional markers of success. The key insight is that extreme productivity emerges from lifestyle alignment, not task management. When your daily life is structured to support your natural rhythms and most meaningful work, productivity stops being something you have to force and starts being something that happens naturally as a result of how you've chosen to live. This alignment extends to how you think about goals and outcomes. Most productivity systems focus on achieving specific results within predetermined timeframes. But extreme producers understand that their most significant contributions often emerge through processes that can't be forced or rushed. They focus on creating conditions that naturally generate valuable outcomes rather than trying to control specific results. This process orientation versus outcome orientation represents a fundamental philosophical difference. Outcome-oriented thinking creates pressure, anxiety, and attachment that often interfere with performance. Process-oriented thinking creates flow, engagement, and trust that naturally support high-level work. When you're process-oriented, you measure success by the quality of your engagement with meaningful activities rather than by specific achievements. This doesn't mean you don't care about results. It means you understand that the best results emerge when you're fully present to the process of creating them. This presence brings us to what might be the deepest underground secret. Extreme productivity is really a form of meditation. It's a practice of sustained attention, conscious choice, and present moment awareness applied to meaningful work. The most productive people aren't necessarily the most ambitious or driven. They're often the most present and aware. This meditative quality of extreme productivity explains why so many high performers develop contemplative practices. They understand that productivity isn't just about external action, it's about internal clarity. When your mind is clear and present, you naturally make better decisions about how to spend your time and energy. When your mind is scattered and reactive, even the best productivity systems become ineffective. The cultivation of this internal clarity requires what contemplative traditions call discernment. The ability to distinguish between what is truly important and what merely seems urgent, between activities that create genuine value and activities that just create the appearance of productivity. This discernment can't be developed through intellectual analysis alone. It emerges through sustained practice of paying attention to the actual results of your choices. Most people make productivity decisions based on how activities appear on paper rather than how they actually affect their energy, creativity, and overall effectiveness. But extreme producers learn to evaluate activities based on their lived experience of engaging with them. They notice which activities leave them energized and which activities leave them depleted, which projects generate momentum and which projects create resistance. This experiential approach to productivity optimization requires patience and self-compassion. It takes time to develop accurate self-awareness about your natural patterns and preferences. It requires willingness to experiment with different approaches and learn from the results without judging yourself harshly when experiments don't work out as expected. But the payoff of this patient self-exploration is enormous. When you truly understand how you work best, productivity stops being a constant struggle and becomes a natural expression of your authentic engagement with meaningful activities. You stop trying to force yourself to be productive and start creating conditions where productivity emerges organically from your alignment with work that matters to you. This organic emergence of productivity reveals the ultimate underground secret. Extreme productivity is not a technique or system that you learn and apply. It's a way of being that emerges when your daily actions are aligned with your deepest values, your natural rhythms, and your most authentic contributions to the world. When this alignment occurs, the traditional productivity problems, procrastination, distraction, lack of motivation, largely resolve themselves. Not because you've developed superhuman willpower, but because you've created conditions where resistance is minimized and natural engagement is maximized. This doesn't mean that productive work becomes effortless or that you never encounter challenges. It means that your challenges shift from fighting against yourself to navigating external obstacles and creative problems. Instead of struggling to motivate yourself to do important work, you struggle with how to do that work as effectively as possible. The journey toward this kind of aligned productivity requires a fundamental reframe of what productivity means. Instead of seeing it as a set of techniques for getting more done, you begin to see it as a path of self-discovery that happens to result in exceptional performance. Instead of trying to optimize your output, you focus on optimizing your alignment with meaningful work. This reframe doesn't just change how you approach your work. It changes how you approach your life. When you understand that extreme productivity emerges from self-knowledge, authenticity, and conscious choice rather than from discipline and force, you begin to see all of your life choices as opportunities to support or undermine your highest contributions. The underground secrets of extreme productivity ultimately point toward a more conscious, intentional, and fulfilling way of living. They reveal that the pursuit of exceptional performance is really the pursuit of exceptional self-understanding. And when you truly understand yourself, your natural rhythms, intrinsic motivations, and authentic purposes, productive action becomes not something you have to do, but something you get to do. What does this mean for your daily life? It means starting with self-observation rather than system implementation. Before adopting any new productivity method, spend time studying your current patterns. Notice when you feel naturally energized and when you feel drained. Notice which activities generate excitement and which activities generate resistance. Notice how different environments, times of day, and types of work affect your energy and engagement. Use this observational data to design experiments that align your daily activities more closely with your natural patterns. Don't try to change everything at once. Make small adjustments and notice the results. Build your productivity approach gradually based on what actually works for you rather than what works for other people or what sounds good in theory. Remember that the goal isn't to become more productive according to external standards. The goal is to become more effective at contributing your unique gifts to the world in ways that feel meaningful and sustainable to you. This might mean working fewer hours but accomplishing more significant results. It might mean choosing projects that energize you rather than projects that look impressive. It might mean organizing your life around your peak performance windows rather than conventional schedules. The underground secrets of extreme productivity aren't really secrets at all. They're ancient wisdom about human nature applied to modern work challenges. They remind us that the most sustainable high performance comes not from forcing ourselves to do more, but from understanding ourselves well enough to choose better. When you approach productivity as a form of self-understanding rather than self-improvement, when you focus on alignment rather than achievement, when you prioritize effectiveness over efficiency, you discover that exceptional results aren't the product of exceptional effort. They're the product of exceptional clarity about what matters most and exceptional skill at aligning your daily actions with that clarity. This is the true underground secret. Extreme productivity is extreme authenticity expressed through conscious action. And that's something no system can teach you. It's something only you can discover for yourself through patient, compassionate exploration of your own unique way of being productive in the world. If you're ready to stop fighting with yourself about productivity and start exploring what aligned effectiveness might look like for you, I'd love to hear about your discoveries in the comments below. And if you want more insights into the psychology and philosophy of human performance, subscribe for strategies that go beyond surface-level tips to explore the deeper principles that actually create lasting change.